an existential threat to Israel. It's an existential threat to every moderate regime and people and individual in the Middle East, in Israel, in the Palestinian Authority, and in the world as a whole. So there is no doubt that me, as an Israeli diplomat, first and foremost, yes, we need peace. We need peace for our children. We need peace for ourselves. We need to cut this unfortunate situation that Israel confronts for so many years since its establishment, almost 70 years of hatred and wars. We have to cut it. And we have to do it in order to be able to fight this kind of war. I think that you have embarked on a very important issue concerning the education towards peace. I think that this is a very important part that is lacking. And this is a vital work, for example, for an organization like the European Union, like the European countries that have embarked after so many years, hundreds of years of wars, culminating in the Second World War, the terrible Second World War, and educating themselves, educating the next generations towards peaceful coexistence. I think that this is what we have to aim, and this is where the European Union and Europe as a whole can play a very significant role, and communities within the European Union should take a role there. I say should and not just can, because I think this is really a moral obligation that we Israelis and others have to educate the other generation. Because if we are going to reach an agreement that will be just, a signature, very nice signature on a paper, it will not hold water for long if we don't have the people-to-people part of it. And the people-to-people part of it begins with youth and education. So I do agree with you, whenever we will reach this phase in which the Palestinians, as we are trying to do with peace, for example, we have so many songs that are dealing with peace, that show the Israeli interest, the Israeli desire to have peaceful coexistence with the other side. I think they should have the same, and then we might be able to better confront the other hazards that are waiting just across the point.
But is the international community, I mean, particularly the Quartet, the UN, the United States, the EU and Britain, taking the whole issue of incitement and hatred within the Palestinian media and education seriously by putting either diplomatic or economic pressure on the Palestinian Authority to change its ways, as it were?
I think that there was a certain period of time a few years ago in which the international community was much more forceful on this issue. I totally agree with the notion of the question. Unfortunately, not these days. There are some entities that are working on it, but unfortunately we find in some parts of the educational system within the other side of the borders, especially in Gaza, of course, but not just in Gaza, in other places as well, we find notions and, let's say, spirit that is not beneficial for peaceful coexistence, and I totally agree. I think the international community, and here again Europe has a very pivotal role, should take it forward and should embark on it, as they did many years ago when I served in Brussels. Less than 10 years ago, we did a very interesting job in scrutinizing the Palestinian authorities' educational stuff, educational books, etc., trying to push them towards peaceful coexistence education. I think it should be redone again, and very forcefully, explaining that without this, there is no real peaceful for the next generations.
Yeah, I mean, many of our viewers are aware, particularly the huge sacrifice that Israel's made for peace. I mean, recently we had the disengagement of Gaza in 2005, which Israel paid with very horrendous missile and rockets attack from Gaza from Hamas, when Hamas overthrew Fatah in coup d'etat in 2007. Is there not a great danger that if Israel were to either unilaterally withdraw from Judea and Samaria, or the West, or known as the West Bank, to withdraw from that area, allow the creation of a Palestinian state, and because of the weakness of Fatah, particularly from the danger they face from Hamas, and is there a possibility that we could see that Hamas would actually overthrow Fatah, and then you've got a whole Hamas-Palestinian state right on Israel's borders? that Israel could face a situation on a bigger scale. For example, the missile attacks from Gaza, it was only a couple of days ago that more missiles were fired into Sderot from Gaza, but that affecting Israel across the whole entire country, that could affect Israel's population centres such as Tel Aviv.
You're totally right. I mean, the Israeli citizen asks himself today two very difficult questions. We were told to get out of Gaza, to stop the settlements, to dismantle the settlements, to stop the occupation, to take out the army. We've done it. No settlements in Gaza, no settlers, no Israeli army in Gaza, and still for years and years, almost a decade, we had around 9,000 rockets and mortar shells being shot at us. The same with the Lebanese border. We have evacuated everything to the right line, agreed by the UN or verified by the UN, and still we have those rockets being shot every now and then from Lebanon. We had the war with the Hezbollah, etc. We evacuated parts of the Judea and Samaria, and still we had years and years of suicide bombers infiltrating from this area and killing innocent people in Israel. So the average Israeli citizen asks himself, what do I get out of this? So the notion of, I would say, unilateral out movement of Israel from the territories is something that was discussed upon in Israel few years ago, even by some of the leaders. But if I'm not mistaken, it is now much less under the radar. I don't think that it is something that is being discussed today. I think that the notion that the Hamas or the Hezbollah, and in the end the hands of the Iranians, are going to meddle there, as they are doing in Lebanon and in Gaza, is a very fearful, is a very frightening possibility for Israelis. And as I said, Israelis are looking very gloomily on what was happening in the northern border, the southern border, and they would not like to see it on the eastern border, which, as you know, is less than 15 kilometers from Tel Aviv. I mean, the width of Israel is between 15 to 18 kilometers in this area. So the possibility of having the Hamas there with Qassam rockets firing on Israeli major airport and Israeli major cities is a very frightening one, and this is one of the reasons that Israel would like to negotiate this agreement with the Palestinian Authority and to make sure that we have the moderate, normal party there and not the very extreme party, Hamas, coming from Gaza and infiltrating to the Judea and Samaria areas.
I mean, we've had recent intelligence reports that have been leaked, either been leaked or they've been presented to the press. There's something like 16,000 rockets that Hezbollah have in southern Lebanon targeting Israel, with rockets that now could potentially reach Tel Aviv, plus also rockets from Gaza as well, and potentially rockets from Judea and Samaria. What is Israel doing to counter this threat? And are we going to witness another potential war like Israel had against Hezbollah in 2006, in 2011?
I'm afraid that what we see is the very long hand of Iran that is working very hard to arm the Hezbollah from one side, which is very easy. Almost direct flights to the Hezbollah with lots of armament, with lots of missiles, with lots of new equipment for the next war that we are not happy to even think about. And the same thing with Hamas. I mean, most of the arms acquired by the Hamas through the tunnels, the illegal tunnels coming from the Sinai Desert, are